Hey friends, it's Dan Moulthrop with the City Club, and we've got a special thing going on today. I don't usually jump in with this many videos, but something really cool is going on. Jahmiel Jackson, our former intern from the summer of 2024, is with us because he's running for Congress. And I thought that the City Club community would be interested to hear from Jahmiel on what he's up to and why he's running. So, hey, Jahmiel.
Hey, what's up, Dan? I'm so excited to be back in the City Club space.
Yeah,
Let's get started.
it's great. So you're running for Congress where?
I'm running for Congress in Pennsylvania's 3rd Congressional District, which is most of Philadelphia.
Nice. And why Philly?
Philly, I could have stayed in Chicago because I went to school. I went to college in Chicago, but Philly's where my roots are. It's where a lot of my friends and family grew up. I spent most of my life there. And a part of my mission is to come back and propose legislation as well as tackle the system that's leaving so many Philadelphians behind.
hmm Jamil, I honestly like I can't believe it was just a year and a half ago you were like showed up here with like your too tight khakis and whatever else and like and you were like holding the microphone and
hmm
and managing the Q&A and helping us with all sorts of other stuff and now you're like running for Congress. That's a big leap.
To piggyback off of that, it's crazy because so many people like the internships I've worked, such as at the City Club of Cleveland, or I had a full-time job, like started a year ago. And
hmm
as I'm telling people that I'm running for Congress, they're saying, Jamal, when you spoke to us a year ago, you told us that you wanted to run for office someday. And I'm like, I told you that? And they're like, yes. And we can't believe that today is actually, that someday is actually today.
That's awesome. It's so great. So talk to us. I want to hear first about kind of your platform. Like, what is it you want to accomplish?
I have two main goals. One is to make the American dream more affordable, and I don't want families to grow up like mine did. I think the Democratic Party, I think both parties are failing us, first of all. They're married to wealthy donors, they're married to foreign and other interests, not ours. So many congressmen. I think when growing up, I didn't even know who represented my city, who was the mayor. I was not political whatsoever, but I could understand that the situation I was living in was not sustainable and that there were many people who could help us out, but we couldn't find the resources, we couldn't get government benefits. So that's a part of my platform is restoring some of that infrastructure for everyday Americans, especially ones in Philadelphia. But another part of my platform is that the Democratic Party does not have a viable space for young men as well as those who feel politically homeless. I think we can't keep going through a presidential elections, hoping that we can only speak to 50% of the country. And once the election doesn't turn out in the way that we want it to, such as in 2024 or in 2016, we suddenly become excised with anger and blame the other part of the country. We think that the best alternative is just to move out to a different space. I think we do need to look at our platform. We need to see what are young men talking about. We can't let them be radicalized online by the far right. And yeah, I think that that encompasses most of my
Did you
platform.
did you say politically homeless before? Is that what you said?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
I've actually been using that phrase a lot lately because it definitely characterizes how I have felt. And I've been a registered Dem, I've been a registered Republican, I've done all sorts of, been an independent. Um, and there is that feeling, right? Like that
hmm
there's there isn't a party that represents kind of the middle.
hmm I totally get what you're saying. I in 2020, I voted for Joe Biden. I voted for Bernie Sanders first because of his message of economic populism. I I guess most people were entering politics during the pandemic. We saw what happened to George Floyd. We didn't know
Yeah.
what was going on with the Trump administration. I was a frequent protester, went to the march, the what's it called, the March on Washington in
Uh-huh.
August of 2020. And I could really see myself on the left. Like I was arguing for people to get vaccinated, and I was a proud Democrat. When Bernie Sanders dropped out, I voted for Joe Biden. It was an easy answer. But while President Biden had both parties, the House, the Senate for 2 years, and the White House, I said, well, why aren't we getting our agenda passed, right? Why can't we create a wealth tax? Why can't we lower taxes for everyday Americans? What happened to healthcare? I'm now graduating from college and I don't have health care. I'm one of those few Americans who are uninsured. And I
Mm,
saw certain things during the Biden administration where I said, why did Biden wait so long to drop out of the race? Why do we push Kamala Harris? So many why questions, and we never get answers for it. I think we feel politically homeless because our values are more socially liberal, but the
mm,
people that we elect are more interested in playing political games and are more connected to their, I guess, to the political class than they are to us. So I think some Democrats are seeing themselves more as independents. They're more open to, well, it doesn't matter what party you're a part of. Can you speak on the issues? Can you be more authentic? And I think yeah, to bring it full circle, the politically homeless category falls into we don't have people in office who are authentic. I think it's more so sanitized talking points. We don't really know where people are coming from and who's actually donating to them, or do they actually believe what they're saying? I'm a huge fan of someone like Senator John Fetterman. Was skeptical in voting for him. I was still politically homeless. I thought after his stroke he wouldn't be able to recover, but I still threw my vote in for at the last minute for him, and I saw
mm.
that he was able to. He's been able to recover quite some bit, but regardless of his votes in the Senate, I know that he's voting his conscience and he's not afraid to criticize other Democrats when it comes to it. And I think that is a rare commodity in Congress.
You know, when you called me last week and told me you were running and as a Democrat, I mean, I knew that you had been working for a Democratic political organization prior, and you and I have had this conversation before. But I was reflecting on
Mm-hmm.
when we first met in your first few weeks at City Club, and everyone here is pretty convinced you're a Republican.
Mm-hmm. It's 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 a crazy joke that I have with even some of my friends. Every time someone mistakes me as a Republican, even
Uh-huh.
like the other intern, I always correct them. Listen, I am a Democrat. At the same time, I'm not afraid to criticize Democrats. I think I spent most of my college career, like when I was 21 years old, 22 years old, going on TV, going on Fox News, different podcasts. Yes, arguing in favor of some of Joe Biden policies that I agreed with, such as um, canceling most of student debt, right? I
Mhm.
think the debt that we're owning now is a form of slavery. I'll always hold that position. At the same time, I'm not afraid to say, President Trump, you love him or hate him, he's showing up in spaces where voters are, regardless if they're going to vote for him. He's making that case. And I think we have a purity test in a Democratic Party, whereas if you don't parrot the same points and if you don't criticize the same person, and it doesn't matter if we're wrong, we have to conform to groupthink. And I think it's actually the best for a party to open up our umbrella a little bit and say, we need to be able to say when policies are going wrong, course correct. Like, for example, President Biden, I think, did not have a perfect border policy. If he had course corrected during some term and said, well, certain things that I signed by executive order didn't work, I would have said, yeah, I can get behind this. I'm looking for politicians on either side who can just tell me what they believe. Can we hold them not to their party, but by the merit of their ideas? And I think people mistake me as being a Republican, but I can't be a Republican, and I'll tell you why. Republicans don't come into the inner city where I grow up, and they don't make that case to black and brown people. They don't speak to minorities. They don't have a platform for minorities either. So it's very difficult for me to join the Republican Party if I want to change the neighborhood I came from when they don't have any infrastructure or willingness or care to do so. So my fight has to be through the Democratic Party to start delivering for cities like Philadelphia.
But it sounds too though that I mean it's not you're not just running as a Dem because that's the only way to get elected in Philly. I mean you spent the last year working for a Democratic political organization that supports candidates across the country.
Yes, I think some people find that surprising. Before I worked for them, I think I worked for the City Club of Cleveland. I think the form of free speech that you guys have is I'm not sure how you would categorize it again like across the political spectrum, but I think being a nonprofit, being able to go into certain under-resourced communities and hold events as we did during the summer I was at City Club of Cleveland is something that you would only see socially liberal people doing who tend to be, more on the who lean Democrat. I would also say that before I worked at City Club of Cleveland, I worked at a progressive, nonpartisan healthcare firm called US of Care. And we were arguing, I think I was there for about 6 months. We argued for policies that were equitable in healthcare, more transparency, more accountability. So most of my professional work has been with progressive Democrats.
Ja, I'm not going to get the way you characterize City Club was very interesting, but I'm not going to go back to that. I would
Hmm.
quibble a thing or two in there, but I'll let it go right now.
Hmm.
But I want to give you a chance to talk a little bit about your personal story. When we met in 2024, all that I think I knew about you was that, you were from Philly, you were at the University of Chicago, and I think you were on like full scholarship, right?
Hmm.
Um,
Yes.
and but I didn't know a lot of your personal story. On your website, which is the website is what's the
J
URL?
Jamil for Congress.
Jahmiel for Congress,
Hmm.
Jahmiel for
Yes,
Congress.
dot com.
Yeah,
Yes.
.com. So, and I was looking at your website when you and I were playing phone tag before we talked, and I learned a lot about
Hmm.
the story of Jahmiel Jackson, your origin story. Do you want to share some of that?
Yes. First off, I'll say I don't share my personal story. I think when people read my website, even my close friends and family members, that's the first time they're hearing about that part of my life as well. Because I like to show up in spaces in an intentional way. I think how people see me, they see I'm articulate. I now have a college degree. I've opened up so many doors, but people don't see how many doors that are locked for people behind me.
Yeah.
Going into my personal story, grew up in West Philadelphia for most of my life. I was born in Delaware, but my mother, she emigrated from Jamaica in the, I think, late 1990s, like 1997. And I think at the time she was 16, 17. So when she came to the United States, she didn't graduate college. I mean, sorry, she didn't graduate high school. So she just didn't have a GED or high school education. She was pregnant with my older sister at the age of 17. So she was very much a young mother. She ended up having three kids. I'm a middle child, and we were all unplanned pregnancies. None of our fathers were in our lives. I had my father, and he was somewhat around until I was 2 years old, but he was killed by gun violence. So I never got to meet him. I never got to really know who he was until the age of like 13. Maybe I'll get into like a funny story about that. But my mother was hardworking. We had like a house where I think all of us had our own room right around 2007. And then the stock market crashed, the Great Recession of that time. And all of a sudden, I think my mother got laid off. We came home one day, I was in third grade or second grade, and I saw an eviction note on our door. Didn't really know what that meant since I'm a third grader, didn't really pay attention. But I could tell my older sister, who was in sixth grade, she knew what was coming. Within a few days, we had to pack up most of our stuff. We lived in bags. We were out on the street. We were house hopping from my mother's friends. And over that period of 7 years of being homeless three times, I underwent so much abuse. In the first household we lived with, my mother had a white coworker who we lived with, and she was very much into getting drunk almost every single day. She had kids that we'd take care of, but she was an alcoholic, and she'd make fun of my skin color all the time. Like she'd call me slurs, she'd compare me to the color of the couch. And even being that young, I think for me it's a testament to God that I had the maturity to not make the situation worse. The four of us lived in one of the small rooms in the back in her house, and I was very grateful. Right, I'd clean, and whenever she'd say something, I would just ignore her. And I never told my mother or my sisters because I could tell that I couldn't make matters worse. Because if I told my mother, like, hey, your friend is not saying the most nice things to me, there's nowhere else for us to go. And then after that, I think she kicked us out after a while because her boyfriend was getting out of prison, and we lived with someone else. I think we were homeless again, and this is now I'm around the age of like 15, 16 years old, and we're living in a very, very small room. I don't know square footage. Wasn't the best at geometry in high school, but if you can just imagine a very small room that we lived in, the four of us, and it was in a house with different strangers. Like I think six different families lived in different rooms in the house. And one day, my mother, she disappeared on us. We thought we couldn't talk for her. We didn't know where she was for 2 months. And at this point, the landlord's coming and he's asking for rent. My sister, she just graduated and she's at college in upstate New York. So it's just me and my younger sister. I'm still in high school in a charter school in West Philadelphia, and I don't know what to say to the landlord. Like I'm dodging him. I know that I'm working a job of minimum wage, 7.25, and I'm buying what I can. I know how to cook through my family, but even my younger sister, I could tell that this was putting a weight on her as well. And it came to one moment where someone in the house, when I was downstairs cooking, he sexually assaulted me. And I think he knew that our mother was away, that there was something happening, and he said like, if you tell anyone, I'll kill you and your family in your sleep while you guys were sleeping. Knowing in that moment and I was 15 years old. In that moment I had a decision to make. Am I going to call the police? Am I going to retaliate and maybe even harm him back? But even so, the second option, I'd most likely go to jail, and everything I was building up for in my entire life would go away. If I did call the police, I had this conscious that CCP, Child Protective Services, sorry, CPC, yeah, CPC, would come and take me and my sister, and they separate us, put us into the system, and just reading statistics about how students in the system are worse off than have more adverse lives than people who don't go and don't get placed into the system. I said, you know what? I'm going to suck it up. I'm never going to tell anyone about this. But at the same time, it's going to come at the cost of no one else can live like this. We shouldn't, children and even anyone should be put into a situation where they have to make tough decisions. Throughout my personal hardship, I always knew that education would be my way out. No matter what was going on at home, I was always I always performed the highest in all my classes to the point where my school was cutting our gifted program. And I said, I can't get into a good college. I can't get the American dream at this school anymore. And I applied to one of the best schools in Pennsylvania. It's called the Haverford School for Boys. Tuition was $40,000 a year. And I knew my mother when she came back, she couldn't afford it. But I reached out twice and I basically begged the admissions director, there's something here. If you believe in me, if you can just meet with me once, I'm sure we can work something out. And I went up there and I saw the disparity of education from what they're teaching in the suburbs, 6 miles away from where I live, then in the inner city. And it made me sick. It made me sick that while I'm here having nightmares about the American dream, students elsewhere who had a luckier start are well on their way of becoming the leaders of tomorrow. So I was able to go there and I left a lot of my friends behind from that school that I went to for most of my life. But even still, people would call me a traitor. They would say, "Well, Jamil, you're leaving us to go to a predominantly white school." But I knew that I'm building something for the future. I will come back. I will, start. I'll hold the ladder down below me and try to effectuate change back into my community. So that's most of my personal story. I got to study at MIT from that school for a summer. I got a full ride to the University of Chicago. And earlier this year, I was the first person in my family to earn a bachelor's degree.
Jimmy, I'm speechless. It's um it's an incredible story. Um, I loved working with you when you were here the summer 24. And now I feel this insane like kind of honor and privilege to know that City Club is part of your story.
Mhm.
Like I'm really proud of that. I mean, I'm proud of you. You're remarkable, truly remarkable.
Thank you. I think having City Club as mentors, I'm not the most talkative person, but I'm very observant. And even the little things I pay attention to and the level of mentorship that you guys gave me, it mattered a lot into the character that I am today.
Well, listen, I hope we'll get a chance to talk more as your campaign kind of comes along and you make it, through to the general election. You're running
Mhm.
against 11 people. Is that right? Am I
Yes,
remembering that right?
11 people,
You
yes.
were one of 12, one of a dozen candidates.
Hmm.
And the primary election is in May.
Yes, it is. It's May 19th.
Is there any polling? Have you like what's going on there?
No, there isn't any polling. It's more of a ground game. Like politics is not for the meek.
No, no, no.
In dealing with the establishment of gatekeeping, of no, wait your turn, of we already have our picked person. And I think At the public facing version, I think the Democratic Party says that we want new leaders, we want people who are authentic, we need change makers, we need the next generation of leadership. But internally, there's this battle of this person's up, this person has run for so many races, and we're backing this person, even if it means nothing will get done for Philadelphians. I think I'm tired of the show games, and that's why I'm running. And I'm putting up one hell of a fight in terms of activating younger voters, voters who haven't voted before, and giving people a different a better alternative to the status quo.
All right. Jahmiel Jackson. Find out more about him at jahmielforcongress.com. It was so good to talk to you. I'm so pumped for you. This is great. Thank you, Jahmiel.
Thank you so much, Dan, and thank you, City Club of Cleveland.